Good evening. Welcome to Bedtime Stories. My name is Sarah Kennedy. Tonight, we're going to take a journey through the stars. A journey that will take us back in time, through the vast expanses of our land, and the unique connection each period of our rich history had with the stars. Take a deep breath, lie back, and let the stars carry you through the night. You've had a busy day, filled with things mundane, repetitive and stressful, leaving you exhausted and in want of escape. On any other day, you might be heading home to cook yourself a hearty dinner and watch your favorite show with a glass of cocoa before you finally tuck yourself into bed with a cozy book. Tonight, however, you have other plans. Tonight, you are headed to the green, rolling hills on the outskirts of town to attend a lecture in astronomy. Something close to your heart, which you've looked forward to for weeks. There's something about space that feels surreal and mythical, even though you know that it's all real. Expanding far beyond what your eyes can see when you look up at the starry night sky. They have always held your fascination, those far-off little twinkles. And as you get out of your car at the foot of the hill, you conjure in your mind the photographs you've seen of space, of billowing gases, galaxies of all shapes and sizes, and cloud-like blooms of reds, purples, and blues. You think of all the constellations gazed wondrously upon by those on Earth since the dawn of time, like the Big Dipper, Orion, Cassiopeia, and Perseus, and you try to spot them yourself. Tonight, you get to learn all about one of the most beautiful heavenly bodies visible to the naked eye. Sirius, the brightest star in our sky, part of the constellation Canis Major. The early evening air is cool and feels refreshing against your skin, rejuvenating your senses. A feeling much like spending a day in the spa after a long, hard week. With your small backpack clinging to you, you walk towards the hill where tonight's lecture is taking place. Your shoes not making the slightest sound against the grass damp with the evening dew. You can smell wildflowers on the delicate breeze that weaves around you as you make your way up the grassy knoll towards the top for the evening's lecture. The excited voices of your classmates drift down to you, and you smile to yourself, eager to join them. With each step you take, your excitement blooms, and you can feel the myriad of stresses of your day falling away. With the sun descended for another day, you look up at the darkening sky and notice that the stars are so much more visible. And tonight, thanks to the new moon. The professor had told your class earlier that even with a telescope, it would be difficult to spot the faintest hint of the moon that day, making it the perfect night for an outdoor lecture. The hill is far enough away from the city lights so that the view remains unencumbered, and you feel awed at how endless the night sky seems, stretching out forever in all directions. You simply can't wait for the evening's lecture to begin anymore, and you slip your backpack off, placing it on the grass and pulling your mat out from within. Grabbing the edges, you give it a little flick and it unrolls before you, made of dense foam and covered in a soft, waterproof, velvety material as blue as the night sky. You place it on the grass alongside your friends' mats before plopping down on your elbows and getting comfortable. You've brought along a soft pillow, an excellent idea, which you tuck under your head. A light blanket is also at hand to throw over yourself for warmth as the temperature continues to fall through the evening. You stretch your legs out, pointing your toes downward, and it feels so good to loosen your muscles after the hike up the hill. You stretch your arms up over your head, then gently bring them down, clasping your hands across your stomach. As the professor takes his place behind you, you take a deep breath and exhale slowly, letting all your thoughts drift away, clearing your mind. The professor speaks quietly, his voice deep and hypnotic as he guides your gaze towards one of the brightest stars in the night sky, the magnificent Sirius, star of the Canis Major constellation. You've long found that star fascinating and often wondered what made it so much more luminous than all the other stars around it. As you stare at its glimmering bluish white light, the professor explains that its brilliance comes from its binary star system, 2 stars orbiting around a common center. You stare up at it in astonishment, trying to imagine how those 2 stars must look up close as they dance together in space, and you continue to listen to what makes Sirius so brilliant. You listen as the professor describes the star as much smaller than our own sun, and yet it weighs almost twice as much. It seems like such a strange concept, and it's hard to imagine how something smaller than our own mighty sun could be heavier. And again, you find yourself appreciating the mysterious ways of the universe. In his soothing voice, the professor tells you that the glittering Sirius emits 26 times as much energy as our own sun, converting hydrogen into helium through a process known as nuclear fusion. You feel humbled by the sheer scope and power of the universe, and your fascination transcends to veneration. The universe is always moving, always expanding and changing form, even though you cannot see it. In his lulling voice, the professor speaks of the star's other names, Alpha Canis Majoris, or the dog star, named so because the Canis Major constellation is shaped like a dog. He asks you to raise your arm and point at the star, and you feel as though you could reach out and touch it. But no. Now you feel like the light from Sirius is, in fact, flowing down the heavenly pathway and into your fingertips, down your arm, from which it spreads across your chest and throughout your body in a burst of light and tingle. You feel a warmth rise in you from the knowledge that everything that makes up the universe is also a part of you, and you feel connected to the majestic night firmament like never before. You are so relaxed now, at ease, and the professor's voice takes on a dreamy quality, fading pleasantly away as he names each star of the constellation, helping you to trace the shape of it. From Sirius, pinned to the dog's chest, you move to Moolervane at the top of its head, across to Wiesen at the base of its spine. You draw an imaginary line over to Aludra at the tip of the dog's tail, then back down to Adara at its hind, and Farood at its back foot. Finally, you bring your finger back towards Sirius and down to Merazam at the front foot. You see the dog come to life before your eyes as it transforms from an outline between stars to something almost tangible and real. The dog is regal and slim, like a greyhound or a whippet. It looks down at you and opens its snout, sending a silent bark out across the universe. You can still hear the professor's voice, but now it has become one with your mind, while you feel your body melting into the ground. The professor is speaking of those before you who were equally fascinated with the star, going as far back as the ancient Egyptians 5,000 years ago. The professor's hypnotic voice and the flickering of Sirius above work together to draw you into a trance, and you feel like you are physically standing with all those who stared up at the star before you. And you can't help but wonder if Sirius looked as bright to them hundreds and thousands of years ago as it does to you now, or if it was brighter still. Your mind now is traveling in space and time, and there are no worries, no cares, just a feeling of connection and oneness with the universe as you breathe deeply in and out, in and out. The professor has begun to talk about the influence Sirius had on the ancient Egyptians. His words are floating around you, and you watch as the story he is telling unfolds before you in the sky. There hovers the god Osiris as he stands knee-deep in the Nile, his bare back towards you as he faces the horizon, waiting for Sirius to rise and send the annual waters that would flood the river that is their life source. You watch as the god looks up, his arms outstretched into the night. The glistening waters of the Nile flow around Osiris, sparkling and twinkling as though poured straight from Sirius itself, blessing the ancient Egyptians with another year of fertile soil and abundance. Osiris and the Nile fade into the stars as the professor's voice meanders away from Egypt and into the time of the ancient Polynesians and the effect Sirius had on them. For a moment, there's silence as the professor takes a brief pause and you breathe deeply, releasing the air slowly from your lungs, realizing that this is the most comfortable you've felt all day. Your muscles are relaxed, and the pillow and mat make you feel like you're lying on clouds. The stars take on new forms as the professor begins to talk of the beautiful islands of Polynesia, brimming with luscious green foliage and surrounded by pristine white sands. Crystal clear waters encircle the islands, themselves full of fish and checkered with coral in every color of the rainbow. As if by magic, the stars cluster together, following the professor's voice, forming the many distinct Pacific islands and atolls. He tells you how the ancient Polynesians relied on Sirius to help them navigate their way across the waters. You imagine the stars change above you into small wooden boats with struts protruding from either side to help them stay afloat in the shallow waters. You even spot some people in the boats, with wooden oars in hands, their dark olive skin decorated with tribal tattoos, and their long dark hair cascading behind them in the breeze as they gently coax their way across the celestial canopy. The stars would have looked so beautiful reflected in the crystal clear waters. The people weave their boats between the islands as Sirius twinkles brightly above them, the palm trees whispering their secrets as the boats pass. The professor tells you how blessed the Fijian people are, because due to its location, Sirius moves directly over the Fijian Islands every night. You wonder what that must be like, to see a star tracking across the night sky the way the sun does during the day, and you notice a particularly bright flash from Sirius, as though it too thinks it's marvelous. The professor tells you that the star also heralded the coming of the winter season to the islands. He speaks of Hawaii, where their name for the star means the Queen of Heaven. With this new story, the people and their boats fade into the night, and in their place a stately throne appears. Upon the throne sits a beautiful woman with glittering stars for eyes and a cascade of stardust for hair. She raises her hand in greeting, and you smile up at her. Above her head, various cosmic bodies form a spectacular crown, in the center of which is Sirius, a shining jewel, more magnificent than any diamond or ruby or sapphire man can imagine. The Queen reaches down to arrange the many skirts of her gown, and the stars shimmy and sparkle with her movement like thousands of bejeweled sequins. You watch as the Queen of Heaven says a prayer for the winter solstice, balancing between the shortest day and the longest night, preparing the people looking up at her for the long winter months ahead. Raising her head, she lifts her crown and disperses across the night sky, leaving only the dazzling Sirius in her place. The professor's voice is now traveling rhythmically across the world as he tells you of the ancient Hindu epic Mahabharata. This time, the constellation takes the name of Svana, the faithful pet of Prince Yudhishthira. As you watch the prince, no longer young, but a dignified king nearing the end of his life, appears among the stars beside Sirius, tall and proud, and the two embark on their mystical journey to find the secret entry into heaven. You imagine that if there was a secret way, then it must be through the expansive universe, as though the magical stars above were a map. You watch as the prince and his dog traverse the universe together, stardust trailing behind them as they loyally remain by each other's sides, neither one willing to leave the other behind. The professor's voice continues to wash over you in gentle waves as you see the magnificent gates of heaven appear before the prince and his beloved pet, guarded by the white elephant, Airavata. The gates are made up of hundreds of glittering stars, and as the two wait patiently, they open, revealing Indra, the king of heaven. The pair finally walk through the gates together, and you feel a sense of peace envelop you, warm and soft like a blanket, as the images slip away into the night. Your eyelids grow heavy as you wonder how many other people are out there across the world looking up at Sirius just as you are. And you find yourself pondering over the future and how the people then might see it. You hope that Sirius will continue to shine as brightly and brilliantly for generations to come. And you wonder what new stories will get added to the legions of extant tales about the famous dog star. All the noises of the night fade away around you, leaving you only with the sound of your breathing as it deepens and slows. You feel the skies and ground, the past and the present come together around you in a serene, all-encompassing bubble of pure calm and comfort. You realize that no matter where you are, Sirius will always look down upon you, watching and guiding you and your fellow travelers as it has done for hundreds of thousands of years. And though a part of you wants to stare up at the stars all night, your eyelids have drooped and sleep is lapping at your ankles. As you take a deep breath and hold it for a moment, you allow yourself a final gaze up at the majestic star, and it seems to wink at you, making you feel as if it's sending a private message just for you, telling you that everything is going to be okay. You release your breath slowly, your body feeling as light as the rustling grass surrounding you, and sleep wraps itself warmly around you like a blanket. You feel so very content that you cannot keep your eyes open even a moment longer. And as you close them, you know that now it's time to drift off to the land of dreams. And when you do, your mind is filled with stars. Good night and sweet dreams.